Thanks for tuning in to Happy Science New York podcast with Yushi and Mariko.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back to our New York Temple video podcast. We are here at episode 5.
Episode 5.
Self-reflection. It's a big topic, very important practice here at Happy Science. I'm Mariko and
Yushi.
Yes. So we're going to have a conversation about self-reflection, why we need it, how it works, and
The introduction of it.
Yeah. So you can start on your practice, you know what you're doing, and if you're doing it right, and stuff like that. To begin with, self-reflection is one of the principles to happiness, right? It's a fourfold path. The third path in the fourfold path, which is the principles of happiness at Happy Science. So therefore, it is a fundamental teaching.
To be happy.
To become happy, you need to practice self-reflection. So just to review, the first one is love, wisdom, self-reflection, and then progress. And I think it's to be noted that it comes before progress.
Good point.
So I guess in a way, it's like right before progress. It's right before happiness, you know? So I guess there's a time for introspection, deep examination, things like that. And when people ask me what is self-reflection, I like to say it's like self-examination, examining your mind, really understanding what thoughts you have. And as we spoke about in a different episode, it's about cross-checking it in the mirror of truth. Are your thoughts reflecting the truth? Right? So I guess let's begin.
All right. What are the questions?
Why do we need to practice self-reflection to become happy?
That's a good question, because I get a lot of this. When I self-reflect, I feel more miserable.
Yes. It's like I don't want to remember the bad times.
Right. So it's like, why is it in the principle of happiness? Unfortunately, I've been through that path, so I know how they feel. But when you're still at that stage, you still don't know the power of self-reflection. So why do we need to do it? If you correctly self-reflect on yourself, you will be able to alter and change your soul's tendency, or your mind's fundamental tendency, which creates your happiness and your future, everything. Therefore, if you can correct a negative mindset, it's pretty obvious that you're going to be happier.
That's true.
But the point is doing it correctly.
Yeah. Well, that's a big point. That's a big chunk.
It is.
You know.
And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it seems so hard to change our tendencies, but as you said, a series of habits create a tendency. And we will talk more about karma, but that also leads to karma.
That's right. That's that's another episode, so let's leave that there. But
so, as you said, self-reflection can correct our tendencies.
Yes.
So that's very big. That's very
Huge.
powerful.
Yep.
And that's not something we should take lightly. But again, I think whenever I do self-reflection and I feel worse, then I know I didn't do it right.
Correct.
And that's because it's not about punishment. It's not about listing out how terrible we are and admitting, that we suck. It's about readjusting and removing the rust from our minds.
That's right.
So self-reflection is a recalibration, or just wiping away the dirt from that mirror, so you can really look into that mirror and see yourself, your true self. So I think, if you practice self-reflection, remember that you should always feel happier, better, but it's about doing it right.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Well, first of all, what happens when we self-reflect?
Okay, so that's a good question. Let's talk about it from a mental perspective and a spiritual perspective. Mentally, like I said earlier, it corrects your mind tendency, which is like a pattern of the way you think. Everyone has a pattern of the way they think, right? So you can correct that. That's the mental aspect, what happens after self-reflection. Spiritual aspect. This is actually, I think, more important. The thing is, when we die, when we leave this physical body, we cross the river Styx. We talked about this in another episode, and we walk through the valley, the flower, whatever, the flower banks, and then you come to a movie theater, and then you watch your own life movie, right? Everything was recorded. All that you did, all the thoughts you had come out as captions in that movie, right? Yikes. So that's a fact that no one can escape from, all right? And then, however, we'd want to sometimes erase some of our past when we hear that, or edit it. That editing is actually self-reflection.
Yeah.
When you self-reflect in the spiritual world, there is no past, present, and future. The time is in one. Therefore, if you self-reflect now, spiritually, you can rewind back to the past and you can unrewind those negative thoughts, words you said, and the actions you've done. And this is like, in a way, you're purifying your own sins by yourself. God has given us the power to purify our own sins through self-reflection. So spiritually, that's the mechanism. When you see that movie, it's already purified. And then coming back to now, because that's afterlife, blah, blah, blah. That's like 10 or a couple years from now. But now what happens is that spiritually, when you self-reflect, because God's light will start shining through your mind, if there were any spiritual possession from evil spirits that were bothering you, that is all gone. Because your wavelength is completely different.
Yeah, they have nothing to hang on to anymore. So by clearing that negative thought, you're clearing the clouds that block God's light. That's why you weren't able to think correctly.
Exactly.
You think dark. So when you clear those clouds, you begin to feel refreshed.
Yes.
It's like feeling sunshine. For the first time in a really long time.
Or sometimes people physically feel that something peeled off their shoulder.
Right, yeah.
And sometimes we call this Dharma tears in Happy Science. But when you truly self-reflect, even if you're a grown man, doesn't matter, tears just rolls down your cheeks and you can't stop it. It's a sensation of sublime happiness when you awaken to the fact of your true self, that you're living in the wrong way. And that's the magical power of the self-reflection.
Yeah, it's so powerful, and it's one thing of us telling you about it, but I feel like the real transformation happens when you have a base of wisdom. And Master Okal has so many books, as we can see. There's so many different kinds of books. One book we can recommend is The Laws of Happiness, and this book is about the 4 principles of happiness. And how to do self-reflection, how to become happy. It's very, very,
I'd say it's practical teachings. In Happy Science, as maybe some of you know, there's so many teachings on the self-reflection, right? Like the Eightfold Path and but it's Eightfold Path, it's for advanced members. So if you really want to be a professional of the mind, yes, practice Eightfold Path. But
and it's kind of like a yearly annual physical exam that we do at the doctors.
Yeah, that's true.
Taking the Eightfold Path seminar once a year, which we do here at New York Temple, is a way to do that annual spiritual checkup.
Yeah.
You check your mind, and it's a long seminar, a couple hours, where you're here at the temple and you really examine your life based on the Eightfold Path. It goes from right seeing all the way to right meditation, and you can read in detail about it in the Laws of the Sun and many of the books.
Right.
And that's more of a deeper end thing.
It is. So going back to the Laws of Happiness, it's more practical. You can start out easily, so that's why it's our recommended reading.
And like when we read books, it forces us to self-reflect.
Yes.
Right.
So here's the correct mindset of reading Master's books. Every book you read, there should be a couple sentences where you're going to immediately self-reflect. I think that's the correct mindset of reading his teachings.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're all kind of guilty of this too. We're like, oh yeah, that person does that.
Right.
We have to be careful, but we have to apply that to us. Sure, like when you know more, you become more aware, people's faults, good points too. But you have a clearer vision or you have a clearer view of people's faults, and that's something that is kind of scary.
It comes with wisdom.
Yeah.
That's why in the Fourfold Path, self-reflection comes after the wisdom.
Right, right. So, yeah, next time or anytime you read Master's books, please consider everything applicable to you. Not just for someone else needs to work on that, needs to change, but to you.
Right.
I'm saying that to myself too.
Yes.
So,
All right.
how about, how do we properly do self-reflection? Without feeling like crap afterwards. Yeah.
My take. I think there's a biorhythm in life. When you're doing really good, everything's going successful and then go ahead and help that success become bigger or help that prosperity become bigger, right? So push the acceleration when you need to speed up. But sometimes you need to push the brakes in life, you see? And there's a biorhythm in life. And when you're at the moment of having to push the brakes, that's when I switch to self-reflection. Meaning, like, let's say that you're doing good, but for some reason you enter a slump, or you're not doing good as you used to. What's going on? Is a very good moment to do self-reflection. Now, in the biorhythm of life, sometimes you are going down towards depression, self-doubt, loss of confidence, illnesses, continuing negative, situations in your life happening one after another. When you're that moment, first, before you enter meditation, I think it's before you enter self-reflection, I think it's very important to pray and get on track with, El Cantare. Be connected with him. Be connected with God first, so that you feel a little more uplifted and you feel cured and you feel confident, you feel more, stable. And then go in deeper and self-reflect. Why is this negative spiral happening from an analytical perspective? Human beings, we have so many functions. We have rationality and also we have emotion.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling emotionally down, reflect using rationality. If you're rationally making mistakes, emotionally self-reflect, meaning
Balance it out. Yeah.
So if you think you're being successful but you're not all of a sudden, it's usually probably because you don't have enough gratitude, you're not feeling the pains of others. You see, this is an emotional self-reflection. So it's the balance. So how to do it correctly, there's no one cutout answer. You have to combine all of this kind of knowledge and put yourself in your own middle path, in your own balanced path. But I hope what I just said will act as a hint for you to get on the right track.
Yeah, and also, Master teaches us about the 6 poisons of the mind. And that's something you can read more in detail through, I would say, maybe the Laws of the Sun has a really in-depth explanation.
Also the mystical laws.
The mystical laws.
Yeah.
And so those, let's start with the first 3 because they're the basic ones. So it's greed, anger, and foolishness.
That's right.
So greed, people are like, I'm not greedy, I'm nice. I give, I'm generous. But actually, what was shocking to me was that greed doesn't mean that you're, just greedy. It just means that you expect something that you don't deserve yet. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's big. Now I can, I feel like I'm a good person, a generous person, but do I expect something I don't deserve yet? I think so. I think a lot of us do that on a daily basis. So it's about that and controlling that. It's like the flame, right? Dimming it out slowly. And then the next one, anger. We all
pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious how anger is very problematical in our daily society.
Yep.
But the next one, foolishness. What is that?
Foolishness, I could say very simply, right? One is if you're always complaining and if you're always blaming. Complaints and blames.
And how does that connect to being foolish? It means that you don't realize the truth of it, right?
Exactly. So you see, the path to happiness is gaining control of your own life. Okay? And if you're always complaining, if you're always blaming others, it means that you have deliberately took your hands off of your steering wheel of your life and you're allowing your circumstances to make you unhappy. That's foolish. A wise man will notice that, all right, this is not heading me to the right direction. So I'm going to have to hold on to my own steering wheel, and I'm going to start driving my car called life. And so foolishness can be like those two things, but also, simply put in simple language, living a life not knowing the truth, not knowing Buddha or God's truth. So that's foolishness.
Yeah, and it's also like living a life of not being responsible for your own life.
There you go.
Like
That's
if
another one.
We kind of blame others when we don't take responsibility for the
Right.
situation. It's
Right.
so much easier to blame others for problems, right? I think everyone does that. But like when I was told by one of our mentors here at Happy Science, take 100% responsibility. And I was like, it's kind of uncomfortable. What if it wasn't my fault?
But that
Still.
feeling is what's making you suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the source of it. And there's no end to complaining and, dissecting what went wrong. But no, think about what you could have done. And like there's always something we could have done.
And the perspective, what you're talking about right now, is the perspective from God. From God's perspective, it looks so foolish for human beings to just continue complaining, because he knows that all you got to do is stop complaining and look at the true cause of your suffering and then correct it. That's why it's called foolishness. But going back to this 3 poisons of the mind, I like how you brought it up, because when going back to self-reflection, the first step you should take, Master said, is reflect on this poisons of the mind: greed, anger, and foolishness. And he even states clearly that if you continue to reflect on these 3 points, first, you will be able to maintain a peaceful heart, very calm mind. Second, as you continue maintaining a peaceful heart, the sense of happiness will increase. Again, self-reflection leads to happiness.
And the sense of gratitude.
God, yes.
Yeah, I feel gratitude is so important because it snaps us out of misery. We switch our minds from taking to giving.
So it's the opposite of greed.
Yeah. And all of these things, this is the process of removing the rust, removing the clouds from our minds, examining how greedy we were, how angry we were, how foolish we were. These remove the rust, and then when that happens, you begin to feel the light. And that's the power of self-reflection.
And when you begin to feel the light, trust me, you will see a change in your life, in your circumstances. When you change your mind through self-reflection, your environment will change. It's not the opposite. If the environment changes, I'll be happy. Wrong. If you change, the environment will change.
Yes. It always begins with us. Yes. So I think we covered the basics of self-reflection in this episode. We hope what we shared with you was helpful to you and that you can now start to practice self-reflection. And one thing I wanted to add, before you do self-reflection, please recite the Dharma of the right mind. Recite prayer to the Lord and prayer to your guardian and guiding spirits so that you're in the right mindset, the right light. And you don't want to be tired. You don't want to be, super depressed. Try to realign yourself first and then practice self-reflection. Okay?
And if you have any questions on how to self-reflect correctly, that's why we're here. Give us a call, text, message us on this YouTube or Facebook, email, anything. We're here to help you out to be able to become happier through self-reflection. So we'd be more than happy to answer your questions.
Yes. Okay, so that wraps up our episode on self-reflection. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Facebook, and Instagram. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.